little toes, your precious little pee-pee, your wondrous size, your tender bottom, your pink chubby thighs.
We've waited so long for you to come. I'm your dad,
And I am your mom,
and we can see it's perfectly true. You're perfectly, perfectly you.
Welcome to BEPE Presents. Birth and Early Parenting Educators is an alliance of professionals interested in and focused on the first period of human development from conception to birth and breastfeeding. This is a dramatically important aspect of human development, perhaps the most important time for human beings in their development. And this is because we've learned recently that the baby in the womb is extraordinarily sensitive and vulnerable and open and communicative, as we were never able to know before. And we want to get the message of these new discoveries out to parents so they can benefit from them as soon as possible. This program you're about to see is one in a series of programs that we've prepared for you, which we hope will be very fascinating and illuminates this period of human development.
You're perfectly, perfectly you.
Never even seen it.
You know, they tell you, well, what if you have complications when you're at home? But the thing is that you have less because you are at home. But it's exactly what you guys are talking about, that you have to trust that. No one can, you can prove it, but you have to trust that for yourself. Do you know what I mean?
Now, until I left this country and moved to Europe, everything that I had learned about pregnancy and birth, I had learned in the very orthodox, usual way from medical doctors. And I assumed simply that that was the way to do pregnancy and birth. It's the way all the doctors were doing it around here, and it seemed the way it should be. And then I moved to Europe and began working for the World Health Organization, and I had a huge shock. Because as I would go around to the highly developed countries of Western Europe, I'm not talking about the third world here, I'm talking about Germany and France and England and Denmark and Sweden and all of these countries, where in fact they are as highly developed as our own country. I discovered to my amazement that there was a very different way of doing birth than anything I had ever seen. First of all, the great majority of pregnant women were taken care of by something called a midwife. I didn't really basically know what a midwife was before I left the United States. Even with all of my training and work in healthcare, I didn't know what a midwife was until I left this country and went to Europe, where I discovered to my amazement that the midwife is an absolutely essential key healthcare practitioner who is responsible for the care of the great majority of pregnant women, doing all of the checkups and tests and all the rest, following the woman throughout her pregnancy. And when the woman has a birth, and I'm talking about in the hospital now in Europe, the woman goes into the hospital, she's taken care of by the midwife assists at the birth, the woman goes home, and the woman has never laid eyes on a doctor at any time during that pregnancy or birth. And they lose fewer babies and they lose fewer women than we do here in the United States. So here was this key health professional that I knew nothing about. And indeed, when I came back to the United States, as I did very often, because I was responsible for maternity care in the industrialized countries for the World Health Organization, so I came here too. and began talking about midwives, I discovered that the doctors in this country didn't know what a midwife was. They thought that she was some kind of a second-class obstetrician or something, which is absolutely wrong. You see? And in this country, they still think that midwives need to be supervised by doctors. Nonsense. In all of these other countries where they have a much better track record than we do, the midwives aren't supervised by doctors. They're absolutely independent health professionals taking care of the great majority of pregnant and birthing women. So I came slowly to realize that there was a whole different way of seeing pregnancy and birth than what we were doing in the United States. One of the most important experiences I've ever had in my life happened after I had moved to Europe, and I was working for the World Health Organization, and I went with a midwife and was present for the first time at a home birth. I was absolutely amazed. It caused for me what some people call a paradigm shift, which means you completely shift the way you think about something. Because suddenly I saw this woman slowly throughout her labor become more and more powerful and strong until finally near the time of birth, she was in control. The doctor wasn't in control, the midwife was. That woman was in control. She found her power. She found her womanness. And she was there with that baby. And when the baby came out, I mean, I'm a neonatologist. I had seen hundreds of babies come out in the hospital. They always come out blue and floppy. Try a home birth. No such nonsense. The baby comes out pink. The baby comes out smiling and alert. It's a totally different phenomenon. You know where is the safest place for a woman to have her baby from the point of view of germs? It's home. You see, if the woman is home, she is surrounded by her own germs. Now, we all are covered with germs. We all live in germs. Our homes are full of germs, but they're our germs. We have lived with them for weeks or months or years, and we have built up very good immunity and resistance to our own germs. We have a kind of Mexican standoff with them, you know, where they don't bother us and we don't bother them, and we live together in some kind of crazy harmony. But they're our germs. Now, the pregnant woman has antibodies to all those germs in the home, and those antibodies get transferred to the baby. So the baby is immune to the mother's germs and to the germs in the mother's home. But the baby is not immune to the hospital germs. And if the mother breastfeeds, all of the antibodies from the mother again get to the baby, and the baby has that much more resistance to the mother's germs and to the germs in the home. So the home is a perfectly safe place for the baby to be from the point of view of the germs. And the hospital is a very dangerous place to be from the point of view of germs. You have to understand that birth is a bodily function. It's all about the body, the woman's body. It's all about, secretions coming out and maybe a little blood coming out. It's all about a woman experiencing very much pain, which she may respond to by yelling and screaming. But you see, what too many doctors do not understand, and it took me a long, long time to learn, is that pain is not evil. Pain is not bad. The pain is put there for a purpose, and it has several essential purposes during the birth. First of all, it focuses the woman so she isn't going to be sitting there thinking about what she's going to make for dinner tomorrow night for the family. No, she is focused, and she needs to focus on her body, and the pain does that. Now, the pain does something else. You see, the labor is done by this muscle called the uterus or womb, which pushes the baby out. And that pushing out is done in a very, very specific way, so that it is done, you have a contraction and then you rest for a while. And that resting allows the baby to once more get enough blood and oxygen and blah, blah, blah. That resting is important in between the contractions. So you have contraction, rest, contraction, rest. And then gradually the contractions get stronger and harder, and the woman's body slowly opens up. A very complicated procedure that the body knows exactly how to do. Now, how does the body control all of this? Through pain. Because the pain goes up to the brain, and in the brain secretes hormones which go through the woman's body and down to the uterus and give the message to the uterus. So then the uterus knows when to contract. Now, without the pain, the brain doesn't secrete this hormone, and there's no hormone to go down and tell the uterus what to do. So if you take away the pain, you take away the whole system. And so the pain is absolutely necessary for this regulation of the system within the body. And so it is a good pain. Now, the pain does something else. The pain gradually causes the brain to secrete another hormone. This hormone is very, very similar to what we call morphine. It is something which relieves pain. And if the woman is not given something to stop the pain, but goes through the pain and uses the pain, gradually the brain secretes more and more of this morphine-like substance, so that gradually the pain becomes less and less for the woman. So that by the time the woman's ready to actually have the baby pop out, she is full of this other hormone that's helping her to get through it. Now, if you come with some kind of painkiller from the outside, then the body will never make its own painkiller. And you see, the body's painkiller is completely safe and doesn't in any way, affect the baby. But any painkiller you bring from the outside has certain risks for the baby. Now, there's another thing about pain that is important. Not only does the woman's body help by bringing out this particular hormone, there are many other tried and true ways to help with the pain that have been scientifically proven to be very valuable. For example, for the woman to have someone with her that is supportive of her has been shown scientifically to reduce the pain and make the labor faster. For a woman to sit in a tub of warm water has been proven scientifically to be perfectly safe and to reduce the pain and speed up the labor. There are many other things that have been shown by scientific work: massage, acupuncture, hypnosis, all kinds of other non-drug ways of coping with pain that are highly effective and that are not dangerous to the woman or the baby. When we medicalized birth, we did a number of different things. One of the things we did was to bring it into our territory in the hospital. Another thing we did was to chop up the pregnancy and birth and afterbirth into categories that fit us. Now, us includes obstetricians who take care of pregnancy. It includes pediatricians or neonatologists taking care of the baby. So, since we have divided that up, we divided the woman and her baby up. And we put the woman over here and the baby over here. And we separated them. And one of the things that we did was that we took the baby away from the mother at the time of birth and put it in another room full of babies, because there all of the doctors and nurses could watch the babies closely. Well, my. That simple procedure of taking the baby from the mother and putting it in another room for a few hours or days turned out, we now know at the end of this century, that that was probably the single biggest mistake in pediatrics in the 20th century. That was a disaster, because when we took the baby away from the mother, we did all kinds of harm to the mother and to the baby, because the mother and the baby need to be together to develop the appropriate kind of relationship with each other. And we know now scientifically that those first few hours after birth are absolutely essential for the mother and the baby to get together in the right way. I'll tell you a true story. There is a country called Guatemala. In Guatemala, there is Guatemala City. Guatemala City has a huge hospital that has, like 5,000 births every year are in that big hospital in Guatemala City. They were having terrible epidemics in their newborn nursery, with babies dying right and left from these epidemics. They came in, they sterilized all the equipment, all of the babies, all of the everything, and the epidemics went right on. They couldn't stop them. And then God came. And God caused an earthquake. And half of Guatemala City collapsed in the earthquake, including this huge hospital. And suddenly, they didn't have any more newborn nursery. But of course, the women were coming in and having babies, because the earthquake didn't stop women from having babies. So they had all these babies, and they had no place to put them. So in desperation, they put the babies in the bed with the mother. It was the only place to put the baby. And you know what? Overnight, no more epidemics whatsoever. There's a perfectly reasonable scientific explanation. The babies were put with the mother. The babies got the germs from the mother's skin, and those were the germs the baby was already immune to, and so there was no problem. So we have gradually learned, and slowly but surely we're shutting down those disastrous newborn nurseries. And we are leaving the baby with the mother at the time of birth, and never taking that baby away from the mother unless there is some serious medical problem with the mother or with the baby. Of course, that can happen, and in a few cases you have to separate. But otherwise you don't separate. And we didn't honor the reality that the mother and the baby is what we call a dyad. It means it's two things but together like one. And it has to be treated like one. Gradually, in this country, there is a growing awareness of the need to change the way that we have been managing pregnancy and birth. For example, there is now a very acute awareness that we've been doing twice as much cesarean section as we should ever have done. And there are efforts everywhere in this country to reduce the number of unnecessary cesarean births. And the rates are slowly but definitely coming down. Also, every year in this country, the number of births attended by a midwife is going up and up. And so people are beginning to understand in this country that it was a terrible mistake when we lost this essential health professional, the midwife.
This is Bella Rhodes Jettis, and she was born 3 days ago on Monday here at home with a midwife, and my husband and I were present here, of course. And Bella slipped out feet first. It's called a double footling breech birth, and it went wonderful. It was about 2 hours after my water broke, and she came out, and my husband claims that she was actually laughing. I was, my eyes were still closed. I was kind of concentrating, and when I looked at her, she had kind of a look of triumph, because it's not necessarily an easy way to come out. Coming out feet first like that is a little bit harder sometimes for the baby and for the mom, so we were very grateful that we were here at home and able to complete the process that way, because typically you're not allowed to finish the birth that way if you're not at home. It's usually automatically a cesarean section. So it went very smoothly, and we're so glad to have her here with us. I wasn't afraid. I was just hoping I would do everything right for Bella, really, because I knew she was working as hard as I was. And I wanted to make sure that I was, pushing as hard as I could, and getting in a position that was as comfortable for her to get out as for me to be in. And I was assuming by intuition that that would be the same, where I was comfortable, she was comfortable. So it was more hoping that I was just doing things right. And I just used a lot of intuition and a lot of prompting from my midwife and from my husband, and prayer. There was a lot of praying, that's for sure. And just knowing that we were going to be able to bring her into the world didn't make me afraid. It just made me want to try really hard. I don't think you can ever say there's not pain, but again, there was a purpose behind it. It wasn't the kind of pain where you're just hurt from an accident or from someone being malicious. It was pain that was going to bring her to us. So it didn't matter, even though you felt it. There was an intensity to it that got stronger as she got closer. But it should be given another word than hurt or pain, and I don't think we have a word to describe it in the dictionary or in our language. My prenatal visits, I think, were extremely unique. I know when I shared it with friends and family, they were shocked in a pleasant way. One was I was swung in a hammock. I think we had oatmeal cookies that day, didn't we? When we had that visit and that exam, we were outside. And another time we had lunch with my family, because my family was going to be involved in the birth, so we had them over to the midwife's house. And another time we went out in a canoe and we had a row after our exam. And all of that helps you develop a relationship with your midwife that you don't get anywhere else, and it makes the whole process very personal and intimate, and I just don't think you can get that anywhere else other than with a traditional midwife. How my husband and I chose a midwife was we knew what was available, obstetrician and nurse midwife and traditional midwife, and we knew that we wanted a traditional midwife because we wanted it to be as normal and natural a thing as possible, with as little intervention unless it was necessary. And we knew with a traditional midwife that we would be able to have that kind of experience, and that our desires would be respected. And the reason we sought out the traditional midwife in the first place is, again, because birth, it's just a normal, another event. It's not a crisis or it's not a disease. And so we wanted someone who understood that and would respect how we wanted to do things. I think the idea of using a midwife is intriguing to people. I don't see it changing yet. I'm hopeful that it's going to change. The reason being is just because not enough people are doing it. And so most of the people that we know have not seen or known anybody that's had a home birth. So it's still, I think, pretty unusual and rare. But I think they're intrigued enough to say, wow, I didn't even know that I really had that option. I just assumed it was unsafe. That's the biggest thing, is people being afraid of the safety issue and the pressures that are exerted by their family and friends about having it in the hospital. So I think people are intrigued enough that that will eventually change and are interested enough. I just don't think that they have that first-hand experience, so they don't even seek out that option. One thing that, especially in America, because sometimes we don't have that global vision and awareness, is that we don't realize the rest of the world, this is what they are doing, is home births. It's part of their lifestyle. Their mothers have done it, their sisters have done it, and neighbors, so they're more familiar with it, and that's what they've always done. The reason why they go to a hospital or a clinic is for an emergency, or something is seriously wrong. They usually don't take that route because they're just having a baby. It's like we've always done it this way. This is perfectly safe and common, and so I think Americans, if they knew that, they would realize, maybe we are intervening a little bit, too much. Maybe we're going overboard. My husband, Dr. John, was extremely involved with the birth, being at home. I think he would have tried to have been anyway if it was in the hospital, but it's just not the environment for it. So I tease him, if he could have had the baby, he would have. So he was very involved being here at home because it's his house, it's his castle. So he felt very confident, comfortable just walking around and being here for me. And he was very helpful. And one of the things I think helped the most was that my midwife was a woman. And to have her here with me, he was more comfortable with that than I think he would have been with a professional male doctor who didn't develop a relationship with him, whereas my midwife did develop a relationship with my husband. And, working with me, and he would have felt kind of out of that circle or that loop. So I think he really enjoyed it too because of that interaction with her. I would definitely give birth at home again. We plan to. We'd like to have more than one child, and we would absolutely do it again without hesitation. We feel that really that's where birth belongs, just like, in our opinion, death. Around the family, in home, it's intimate, it's private, it's personal, and the alternative is a very sterile environment because it needs to be. That's the environment it's in a hospital or even a clinic. And it can be impersonal. You're not given the same freedom that you're given at home. I was allowed to take as much time as I could to go through my contractions in labor. I wasn't rushed at all. So the care that I got from the midwife, also just that personal connection and attachment, was so much more profound than I think what I ever would have received in a clinic or a hospital.
My name is Dr. Fred are do hard. I'm a family practitioner, an osteopathic physician. I practice family medicine in St. Louis, Missouri. I do a lot of home deliveries, family practice work. I got involved with midwives back when I was a student who were living babies at home. And so I kind of liked the way that it happened and occurred, and I felt that it was giving mothers an option to have a home birth and giving them option to be themselves, be in control of their bodies. And many of them were quite concerned about that. And then when I became a doctor, then I thought about that, and I continued that in my practice.
In 1982, up in Washington State, I went into labor with my firstborn. It was a long labor, of which most of it I spent at home. When I got to the hospital, they were very eager to start all their procedures and their tactics, and epidural and all of that.
Managing pregnancy is just as important as birthing the mother. You got to manage them through the whole process. And the birthing process where you win the mother over. You know, you win her over at that time, and then the delivery is easy.
When the doctor got tired of waiting, he said, I mean, I'm cutting to the chase, he said, prep her for a C. And I said, you know, he said, we have fetal distress. And I said, no, we don't have fetal distress. I said, the baby's just moved into my back and away from this monitor and everything. And he looked at me with great disdain, like, how dare you second guess me? I'm, you know, God in scrubs.
When a woman trusts a certain provider that she is seeing all the time, the woman trusts that provider. She gives herself to that provider, and she gives her trust, her point of her life to them. And then she expects that provider to give his total understanding to her. And there's a certain obligation that you have that's not stated or said, that to make sure that things go well. And everybody can feel that. You can feel the loyalty, you can feel the trust whenever it's there. You know the patient trusts you, and the patient knows that you trust them. So it's more than just the fact that it's money. It just trust that you're going to get them delivered and fine. You know what I mean? It's more than that. Trust me that I will make sure that things go well for you, and things will be okay.
He repeated himself to the nurses, prep her for a C. And so he went to go scrub. The nurses went to go get some tray. Who knows what they were going to do to me. And my labor coach, I said, was an obstetric nurse, had, you know, 8 children. And I said, go lock the door. And she said, oh, Laura, they'll kick me out. They'll kick me out. I said, no, go lock the door. They're not going to cut me open.
There's a mother who wants the dim lights. There's a mother who wants a certain aromatherapy. There's a mother who wants maybe the bath therapy. There's a mother who may want just to lie down and just not be bothered and just call you in.
And she locked the door, and for 45 minutes they banged. They never let up. For 45 minutes, we were in there about 2.5 hours without them, and maybe 3, and no clock or watch or any of that. And they were telling me, you're going to kill your baby, and you have fetal distress, you don't know what you're doing. Well, she was born I let him in when she was crowning, and she had an APGAR, 10-10 APGAR, and when he said that, after I just delivered, he said APGAR 10, that was the first score, and I said fetal distress. Yeah, you know, like, sure, you know what you're doing. So, yeah, that was my first delivery. After that, I didn't want to have any more in the hospital.
Knowing women as I know women, when women want to have a home delivery, a home birth, they will find some person, some provider to do that. Even though they don't want to break the law, but if they want a certain woman to do it, some way, some measure, they always seem to find that person to do that.
With my 4th child, my midwife was distracted, and I didn't feel, you know, she ended up, you know, writing me a long letter because we were very close. We prayed together and we're very tight.
That's very important. You must let every woman be in their space, and if they believe, whatever they believe in, you must let them believe in that.
My 3rd and 4th at home, I went into the tub after my husband and I had been lying in bed, and for my third one, which again, hour and 20 minutes, and I was starting transition. I said, I want to be alone. You know, I want to go get in the tub. And I went in the bathtub and just worshiped the Lord. It was just he and I with each very hard contraction. It was like you see in your mind's eye what this is accomplishing, that this is hurrying you to the goal of a new life, and you're going to get to meet this baby you've been talking to and praying for and anticipating for so long.
The mother who is a Mormon or who is a Christian Scientist or who is Jehovah's Witness or anything that they believe in, you must respect each one of those, and therefore you must learn each own pattern religion. The mother who is in the spiritual, she's much more relaxed. She handles her labor much better. She tried to understand the pain in reference to what it's doing for her body, and this is a God-given gift for a baby to deliver a child. And the pain then become an instrument, not a fear, you know, that helps her deliver the baby. And then when they put that in their perspective, then you know they will look at it as a total encompassing feat that they must endure to have the baby, and nothing they fight. There's less drugs. There's less anxiousness. They're less screaming. They're not upset. They understand it, and once you tell them why they're doing it, in the spirit that they're in and the religion that they're in, then it makes sense to them. Because once they're in that religion pattern, this is the state they're in, and you can't alter that, and so you must understand that.
So I went to see Dr. Duhart, of whom I had heard good things, and he took me. I had a month and a half left, about a month left, and he took me, and we had a great birth. That was the underwater birth of my son.
Oh, did I introduce you, Alexa?
Who's that sweet man? That's Dr. Duhart. He's helping Mommy to have this baby.
No, I've never pushed more than twice.
Do you know Dr.
First
Duhart?
two, one push and then right.
Have you met him?
The more certain the mother is, the easier it goes. It's the mother who is not sure, who is shaky, who is listening to the outside forces, listening to her friends and so forth. Then this is the patient must really stop and settle and talk down and talk with for a long time. So you want a mother who is really sure that she wants this. The husband who isn't sure, he will eventually fall in line. He eventually will listen to the wife, and the people behind them will eventually fall in line.
I wanted the children to be a part of the birth because they're such a huge part of our lives, and we invest so much of ourselves in them, and they will have responsibilities with any new baby that comes into the house, and I think that's important, not to make babysitters out of them, but it's a part of their training to be a part of it and to have a job and to have an important role as a big sister, and I wanted them as a part of it, but not to shut them out. This is a private thing that's taking place with mother and father, but come in, baby's going to be born, and this is the big day, and because their joy adds to my strength, and their joy enhanced my experience.
I videotaped it, and after he was born, I had this intense feeling of joy. I was like, wow, I've never felt like that before.
Seeing a new life coming into the world is an exciting thing, and that there's nothing to be embarrassed about it. And those births that you see on TV, mostly that doesn't happen. There wasn't all the busyness, especially when at home birth. There was no screaming, no squealing, well, except for me and my little sisters.
And I expected to be grossed out or something, but it wasn't. It was just beautiful, and I was like, wow, it's my little brother, Well,
there's not very many secrets in our household, and I did want my kids to be a part of the birthing because so they'll be comfortable with it and informed, and it won't be as a shock to them when they too go through that with 3 daughters. Human sexuality and procreation and all of that, I think children should be a very natural and normal thing. I don't think it should be hush-hush and uncomfortable. My husband and I are quite free to kiss and hug on each other. And when we want to be alone, we say we want to be alone. With a house full of kids that are, such diverse ages, it's hard to keep any secrets from them. And I know it's not any great mystery when we want time, whether it's just to go talk or you go soak in a tub together. I think kids shouldn't see that as something dirty. Let the marriage bed be undefiled, and I think that should be a comfortable part of real life. And so, a child coming into the world, I think that too should be a comfortable part of real life. That they should not be, aghast and that's nasty.
I learned very early in my practice when I started practicing is when you take care of one individual, you're taking care of that woman, but behind the woman, you're taking care of their mother, you're taking care of their dad, you're taking care of their grandpa, you take care of their grandma. You never see nobody when things are going along normal. But if something goes wrong, you see everybody. So it's your responsibility to make sure everything go well. And you have a responsibility to that woman to make sure everything go well. So you gotta put yourself out there to do that. And you must understand that particular woman. Every woman's different, and every woman needs that understanding that you can't treat them all the same. They're really different. So you must give each one their own individual space, and know how to treat each one, and know how to treat each individually, because they're all different. But women who want home birth and want to sort of be in control, you must give them respect. They want their own space. They want to be sort of very private individuals. They want to have birth a certain way. Every individual got the reasons for that, and every person got a certain pattern that they want. When mothers are pregnant and tell people that they're having a home delivery, everybody want to tell them a horror story about a person in the hospital that they know of. And the people who are talking about pregnancy and telling about people who don't have a home delivery never have had a home delivery before. And I always ask the mothers who have had home deliveries, and ask them their opinion and let them tell you about it. Because if you ask a person who had a hospital birth about it, then they will always tell you what the hospital did. And the hospital and home birth are two total different entities altogether. So you can't base your birthing on a hospital birth, because we approach it entirely different. And when mothers approach people who are negative, I just tell them to just relax, take it easy, and just know that that they're making the right decision, because there are more people who will speak negative about home birth than they're positive, only because they had never had one. And I've always say that if they've seen one, then they would not speak that way. And then the question that you got to ask is, have you ever had a home delivery yourself before that, really? And once you answer the question, then of course say no.
Well, I'm noticing that there's a little fire over there across the beach, and this is the beach where I grew up, and that's what my mother used to do too. She'd sit over by the rock and say, "Okay, I'm here," and build a little fire and read her book, and this is where we grew up. And then when I had my 3 babies, which was just over the hill in Mill Valley, they were all born at home. And I have to say, it was the biggest high in my life, having my first child born with just my husband there. And the second child, it was the same way, just my husband attending. And the third child, by then, we found a midwife with a license, and she attended, and it was a wonderful experience for her, where she sat mostly on her hands and just admired the beauty of nature just unfolding. And I think that I think nature's calling us back, to come home, to be more natural, to love Mother Earth and appreciate the gifts that are being given to us every day. And I think that we need to be better receivers of these gifts. Having our babies safely and naturally, according to the laws of nature, that's a gift. It's hard to even explain how profound that gift is. It's so empowering to be really at one with love, divine love. I always thought that love created the baby and love delivered the baby, and it was just a very profound experience that you can't get any other way. So I encourage you, don't be afraid. Trust birth. It's natural. Women have been doing it for millions of years, and if you just surrender, yield to the laws of nature, you'll be benefited in ways that go so far beyond just holding a little baby in your hands.
Last year, I co-wrote the Safe Baby Resolution with Star Newland of Hawaii. Star is the coordinator of a Domestic Harmony Initiative grassroots group, and the Safe Baby Resolution grew out of that because of the high incidence of violence in the communities over there. She's been promoting creating harmony from the beginning of life. So we co-wrote the resolution, and it was introduced into the Hawaii legislature. We asked the state legislature to look at the science that exists for decades now that shows that if we put our resources and our focus at the beginning of life to create healthy, harmonious human beings from even before conception, that we could create a new society of people who are harmonious and healthy and happy. We cannot continue, as I did in social services for years, to try to change people's lives and their behavior without looking at the primal period. In our society, in medicine and psychology, and in even religion in our churches, we don't honor that the soul is coming in at conception and that this early period is pivotal. It's fundamental. It's foundational. It's the core of who we are in this life. I can work with people anywhere from birth to 80, 90 years old because the memory of our birth is in our body and it's in every cell of us, so that we can heal whatever that birth experience was, whether we're a mother birthing, whether we're a baby birthing, whether we were a father that observed it, or a physician or a nurse who has been a participant in births where there was trauma or difficulties. The birth trauma healing recognizes that it is the baby's birth, that this soul that has come in at conception and has existed before conception is experiencing birth, and that whatever happens there can also be healed. And so it can be healed. And in the work, we look at the positive things that happened in that birth. Every birth has joyful moments as well as traumatic or disappointing moments. Many women right now are planning these wonderful home births and they end up with a cesarean and they're just devastated. But even within that, they have all the beautiful, wonderful things that they did to prepare for the birth. And those are moments that we bring into the therapeutic process so that we can create new imprints for the baby. And so much of it is recognizing that the baby experienced their birth. And so instead of seeing this as a bad birth or a traumatic birth, we look at it in terms of the resources that were there. For me, healing as a almost 40-year-old, I was able to look at the resources in my birth, and they allowed me to see the traumatic aspects of my birth in terms of survival skills. Because of this birth, because of the cord around my neck, because of the forceps, those actually became imprints for my survival skills, and for me being a person who can get through a lot of things. So for a baby that has a difficult birth, we don't need to ignore it anymore and say, oh, babies are resilient. Babies get over it. Babies don't even remember it. And from Dr. Chamberlain's work in particular, we know that babies absolutely do remember, and he has a body of scientific research to show how that is. So we no longer have to ignore that sometimes in birth things don't go right or go well, so that we can heal them. And in doing so, we honor that person, we honor that baby that struggled, that overcame, that found a way. And when we honor that, we don't have to live in the shadow of our lives anymore. I found out that I didn't have to be a survivor every minute. But when I need to, I sure can. And so that is the gift of a challenging birth. If we conceive babies that are wanted and aware, if we gestate them in environments that are safe and loving and peaceful, and if they have a gentle, loving birthing experience and a safe and protected and connected experience with their mother after birth, we'll create people who don't need to struggle, who don't need to fight with each other, who don't fight for space, that don't invade other people's boundaries, that aren't angry, and they cooperate and they are harmonious. So from the beginning of life, if we want to change this planet, if we want to create peace in the world, if we want to create harmonious children, we have to start within us as parents and be ready and prepared to bring a soul into this life and to welcome them and create the health and the harmony and the healing and health before we conceive, and continue it through gestation, through labor and birth, through the early parenting years, and we'll have a different world. I do believe that birth is a sacred journey of the soul into this life, and that as adults conceiving, hopefully adults conceiving a child into their lives that they want, and they want to take care of this soul and be the parents of the soul. That's a very sacred, honorable journey. And I have 4 children, and they are all my teachers. I call it random conception. And we have this going on in our society to a degree that's really, really tragic, where children are being born unwanted, and they're not being nourished and supported and cared for during gestation. And right now, obstetric birth is just so traumatic. They're given drugs, they're induced, cesarean rates are high. There's no regard for this prenatal primal period and how sacred it is, and how honored that we should be to bring a soul into our lives, and how honored an obstetrician or a midwife or a nurse could be to think that they are the first to touch this soul coming in. To me, it's just honorable. I mean, I think it's the most awesome work that a person could do on this planet, and it needs to be revered. The human being coming in to life needs to be revered in our society. And I sometimes I see, not even in churches, in our predominant religion, Christianity in this country, the soul coming in is not honored. I mean, we have the abortion, the anti-abortion aspect of all that, but once that baby is, not aborted, the sense of reverence is gone. When we're around a pregnant woman, we see a pregnant woman at work or in on the street, you know, we should be in awe of her. She's bringing in this soul. You know, I mean, what if every baby that was brought into this world was seen as the most amazing creature, the most amazing soul, and that, you know, parents were honored that I'm bringing in this life and I'm responsible for this life. Not just a decision about whether or not this life is going to come in, but like every moment after that is such a profound moment. We'd have a different world.
Your sweet, sweet lips, your perfect nose, your rosy cheeks, your 10 little toes, your precious little pee-pee, your wondrous size, your tender bottom, your pink chubby thighs.
We've waited so long for you to come. I'm your dad,
and I am your mom,
and we can see it's perfectly true. You're perfectly, perfectly you.
You've got Daddy's dimple,
You've got Mama's smile. We've been praying for you all this while, and now it's clear